On October 1st, 2021, Two Star Games released their announcement trailer for a new indie horror game called Choo-Choo Charles, where a spider train named Charles chases you around an island while you collect scraps to upgrade your own train and fight back with the help of some locals. Throughout the year, Two Star Games has kept us updated on the game's progress with videos on their YouTube channel and answering questions on Twitter. With the game recently being released on December 9th, 2022, I was super excited to play this as it was mine and many others' most anticipated horror game of 2022. You can pimp out your train with different paint colors, upgrade its speed, damage, and armor, and collect a variety of weapons including the Derailer, Bug Spray, the Boomer, and Bob. Use these to inflict damage to Charles to scare him away and allow you to make any necessary repairs and continue on with your quests. After you complete all your quests, you then move on to the final battle where you must battle Charles and finally free the island from his terror. After completing the game to 100%, here are some of the things that I like and some of the things that I didn't like. To begin this list, as soon as you start the game, you're immediately met with a calm, eerie atmosphere that sets the tone of what you're getting into. As you progress in the game, you come across different points of interest that all have their own atmosphere and vibe that still work well with the overall setting. Something that helps build the suspense and adds to the setting is the ambient music as you're walking around and exploring the map. The music also doesn't shy away from danger as it can pick up and intensify when you're met with danger, such as running into cultists or being chased by Charles himself. This leads me to another thing I like about the game, and that's the soundtrack. Now I know there's not too much to the soundtrack, but it does what it needs to do to get you fully immersed into the game. My favorite track so far is the one that plays in your final battle with Charles, but I'll let you all experience that on your own to avoid any spoilers. Some other things I liked were the map design and game mechanics. The map is fairly big but easy to traverse considering you're in a train that loops around the whole island. There's lots of points of interest as I mentioned before, and if you look hard enough you can also find paint cans as they're spread out all over the map for you to find. The best way to describe the style and design of the game is that it's a mix of realistic and cartoonish styles. It definitely has its own style, and that's something that most games lack these days. As for gameplay and mechanics, everything is pretty simple. You have your basic controls of movement, camera movements, and interactions, and the way Charles moves around is pretty cool too. Occasionally, he will get stuck in some areas and clip through your train, but it's nothing too bothersome as your main focus is to just get away. You can sprint, jump, and even lean to peek around corners when hiding from Charles or the cultists, but you can almost never truly outrun these guys as they're on you until they take you out or you take them out. There's also a rubber ducky Easter egg, but be careful not to look at it too long. Charles doesn't like when people look at his ducky. Nearing the end of this list, I want to quickly mention the voice acting. I think the voice acting in this game is amazing, and it definitely gives each character their own sense of identity. The voice actors really hit the mark on how these characters would be while in this situation, and my favorite hands down is the pickle lady because her energy is just unmatched compared to the others.
I need my pickles!
But to finish off this list, I do have one more thing I like about the game, and I want to give a quick spoiler warning in case you wish to experience this during your playthrough. The final thing I loved about this game is the mini Slenderman style quest that you have to do, which requires you to collect 8 pages and return them so they can be burned. This was probably one of the more anxiety-inducing moments of the game, and it gave me some nostalgia to when the first Slenderman game came out years ago. Whatever is chasing you during this quest increases in speed as you collect more pages, inducing more panic into you until you collect them all.
Jesus Christ! Oh, fuck! I don't like that!
This is definitely a nice addition to the game, and I thank you Two Star Games for including this. With that being said, this is going to be it for all the things I liked in the game, and now we can move on to the things that I didn't like. Now, as most games out there, nothing is perfect. Every game will have its faults and things that people didn't like about them. As much as I loved and anticipated this game, there were a few things I wanted to mention and bring to attention. Again, these are my own personal opinions and yours may be different, but it's still good to give feedback regardless so that things can be fixed or improved over time. To start, the first thing I notice is that you're unable to remove your waypoint and that you're unable to crouch. I feel like these are basic core mechanics for most games, especially where quests are primary objectives and hiding is a key aspect. It doesn't take away too much from the gameplay, but I did find myself trying everything to remove the waypoint and occasionally pressing the C key or control to see if I could crouch. Another thing I didn't like is how defenseless you are when you come across the cultists. I searched all around the map for any form of melee weapons, and unless I just missed one or didn't find it, there isn't really a way to fight back against them unless you lead them to your train and take them out with your weapon arsenal. I will say though, it's a lot of fun to use the boomer on them.
Pro strats right there, baby.
Next, I'll be moving on to the main train. Now, I stated before I like the train's mechanics and how easy it is to use, but there are two things about it that just felt a little lackluster to me. The first thing would have to be the overheating of your weapons. Now, it totally makes sense for your weapons to overheat, but I feel as if it overheats just a little bit too fast. It would be better if they could be used for a second or two longer, but once you get all your weapons, it doesn't pose much of an issue as you can just switch between them. Still, in early game, I think the derailleur overheats too quickly and you're prone to more damage being dealt to your train by Charles. This does, however, get countered for how much scrap you're able to find throughout the map, and it can be used to repair your train no problem. The second thing about the train I think isn't the greatest is how fast you can level up your upgrades. You have 3 upgrades in total including your train's health, and with how much scrap you collect in the game, it's fairly easy and quick to max everything out with no repercussions. The best way I think this could be fixed is to have unique train parts for each upgrade that you have to find in order to fully max them out. Other than that, there really wasn't much else about the train that I didn't like, and I'm glad that it was only kept to these 2. Lastly, I did find that the game's lore is okay, but it could be much better, and that the game itself could be a little longer. It took me around 4 hours to complete, as well as other YouTubers and streamers that I've watched, and at max I would say this is about a 5-hour game. I also haven't thought too much yet on how the lore could be improved, but there could have possibly been some collectibles that give more insight and background to Charles and the island he resides on. The pieces of paper you find around the map are in the format of letters, notes, event logs, etc., but there were only a handful that gave a bit of background to Charles and the island. Achievements are also pretty easy to get, as every quest you complete yields an achievement, and the only one that you really have to work for is collecting all 11 paint cans, and even then that's still a pretty easy task that can be completed in a single playthrough. Again, these things don't take away from the game one bit, and I'm actually fine with the game upon release, unlike other games that are released too soon and full of bugs and glitches. I'm glad this list was short, and that wraps up things for what I found that bothered me the most. Despite the game being on the shorter side with a very simple storyline, I had a ton of fun playing this, and the hype definitely lived up to my expectations. The map design was great, the music helped build suspense and anticipation, and the overall gameplay and tone really immersed me in every way I hoped it would. I do wish that there was multiplayer, as I can only imagine how much fun it would be to fight off Charles with friends, but for what the game is, I think single player suits it perfectly fine. I would also like to see a difficulty setting implemented into the game so more experienced players can have more of a challenge, and maybe even add a survival mode to see how long you can last against Charles. Considering this game was developed by mainly one person, I think 2-Star Games nailed it in their execution and perseverance throughout the development. I've already seen numerous positive reviews for the game, as well as a bunch of fan art and support from the gaming community prior to the release, and at the time of writing this review, it seems to only be going up. I'm super excited to see future projects from 2-Star Games and hope they get the same amount of love and support as Choo-Choo Charles did over the past year. It takes a lot to make a good horror game, and while I wouldn't say this is the best horror game out there, it definitely fills that horror game craving you might have without being overly scary or not scary enough. I highly recommend giving this game a try if you're interested, and you can currently pick it up on Steam for $19.99, though prices might vary depending on when you're watching this video. With all of that being said, this has been my review of the video game Choo-Choo Charles, and I hope you all enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.